I, 28F, have been engaged to Martin, 30M, for about a year now. We're planning our wedding for next summer, and everything was going smoothly until the guest list became an issue. My dad, 55M, remarried when I was 16 to Diane, 50F. From the beginning, our relationship was strained. My mom passed away when I was 10 after a long battle with cancer. Those last few years were tough, but they brought my dad and me closer together. After mom died, it was just me and my dad for a while. We developed a routine: Sunday morning pancakes, movie nights on Fridays, and long bike rides on weekends. He even learned to braid my hair, badly, but he tried. We were really close, and I have great memories of those years. When I was 14, my dad started dating Diane. He met her at a work conference. She was a representative from another company. At first, I was happy for him. I remember the first time he brought her home for dinner. She brought me a bracelet and seemed really nice. We had spaghetti, my favorite at the time, and she told funny stories about her job. I thought maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Diane has 2 kids from her previous marriage, Andy, 27M, and Sharon, 25F. The first time I met them was at a picnic in the park. Andy was quiet but friendly, teaching me how to throw a frisbee. Sharon was more outgoing, chattering about her favorite bands and movies. It felt like the beginning of something good. But things quickly went downhill after the wedding. When Diane moved in with us, she redecorated the entire house, getting rid of a lot of my mom's things without asking me or my dad. I came home from school one day to find my mom's favorite armchair gone, replaced by a sleek modern one. When I asked about it, Diane said she had donated it because it didn't fit the new aesthetic. She claimed she wanted a fresh start for our new family. I was devastated. That chair was where my mom used to read to me every night. I ran to my room crying, and when my dad came to check on me, he just said, "Give it time, sweetie. Change is hard for everyone." It was the first time I felt like he wasn't on my side. Over the years, there have been countless incidents that showed Diane's favoritism towards her own kids. On my 16th birthday, I wanted a small sleepover with my 5 closest friends. Diane insisted on inviting her entire extended family, turning what I wanted to be an intimate celebration into a huge family reunion where I barely knew anyone. I spent most of the party hiding in my room, feeling like a stranger at my own birthday. Meanwhile, for Andy's 16th birthday a few months earlier, Diane had organized a surprise party with all his friends, rented out an entire laser tag arena, and even got a local band to play. The contrast was stark and hurtful. When I was 17, I won a state-level art competition. The prize included a summer art program in New York. I was thrilled, but Diane convinced my dad it was too expensive and not practical for my future. Instead, that summer, they sent Sharon to a month-long dance camp in Los Angeles because it was her passion. The pattern continued into college. When I graduated, Diane convinced my dad that I didn't need any help with my student loans because I needed to learn financial responsibility. I ended up working 2 part-time jobs alongside my full-time entry-level position just to make ends meet. But when Sharon graduated a year later, they bought her a new car and paid off all her debts, saying she needed a fresh start in life. There were smaller incidents too, that added up over time. At family dinners, Diane would always serve Andy and Sharon first, often leaving me with the smallest portions. During holidays, their stockings would be overflowing while mine had just a few token gifts. When relatives visited, Diane would gush about Andy's and Sharon's accomplishments but conveniently forget to mention mine. My dad, throughout all of this, remained frustratingly passive. Whenever I tried to talk to him about how I felt, he'd say things like, "Diane is trying her best," or "We need to make this new family work." It felt like he was constantly choosing them over me. The final straw came last Christmas. My dad had always given me a special ornament each year, a tradition he started with my mom. They were precious to me, each one held a memory. This year, I noticed my ornaments were missing from the tree. When I asked Diane about it, she casually mentioned she had donated them to make room for new decorations. "We needed a cohesive theme this year," she said, gesturing to the color-coordinated baubles on the tree. I was devastated. Those ornaments were one of the few tangible connections I had left to my mom and to my childhood with my dad. When I confronted my dad about it, he just sighed and said, "Maybe it's time to start new traditions." It felt like the last piece of my old life had been erased. Now, with the wedding planning, I decided not to invite Diane. The thought of her being there on one of the most important days of my life, after years of making me feel unwelcome in my own family, was unbearable. I told my dad I wanted him there, but I couldn't have Diane at my wedding. I explained how years of her behavior had hurt me and that I wanted to be surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me on my special day. My dad is furious. He says I'm being childish and that Diane is family whether I like it or not. He's threatening not to come to the wedding if Diane isn't invited. My step-siblings are also angry. Andy called me selfish, saying I was tearing the family apart. Sharon posted a long rant on social media about how I've always been difficult and can't let go of the past. Martin supports my decision. He's seen firsthand how Diane's behavior affects me and agrees that I shouldn't have to deal with that stress on our wedding day. But some of my friends think I'm being too harsh. They argue that weddings are about bringing families together and that I should give Diane another chance for the sake of family harmony. But I feel like I've given her chances for over a decade with no improvement. Every time I've tried to build a relationship with her, I've ended up hurt. The wedding feels like my last chance to stand up for myself and set boundaries. I can't help but think about how different this would be if my mom were still alive. Would she be helping me pick out my dress? Would we be arguing over flower arrangements? The absence of these moments makes the conflict with Diane even more painful. Part of me wonders if I'm holding on to the past too tightly. Am I being unfair to Diane? Should I be more understanding of the challenges of blending a family? But then I remember all the times I tried to connect with her, all the olive branches I extended that were ignored or rebuffed. I'm torn between wanting my dad at my wedding and needing to protect myself from more hurt. The thought of walking down the aisle without him is heartbreaking, but so is the idea of having Diane there, a constant reminder of years of feeling unwanted and second best. Ida for standing my ground and not inviting my stepmother to my wedding? Am I letting past hurts cloud my judgment, or am I finally setting necessary boundaries? Update 1, it's been about a month since my original post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me gain perspective on the situation. After my dad's initial anger, he called me a week later, asking to meet for coffee. I agreed, hoping we could have a calm discussion. We met at the little cafe where we used to go for hot chocolate after my dance recitals when I was younger. As soon as I walked in, the smell of cinnamon and coffee brought back a flood of memories. My dad was already there when I arrived, 2 steaming mugs on the table. He looked tired, with more gray in his hair than I remembered. When I sat down, he pushed a mug towards me, hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, just like I used to have. The gesture nearly made me tear up. He started by apologizing for not standing up for me more over the years. He admitted he had been so focused on making his new marriage work that he overlooked how Diane's actions were affecting me. I thought if I just tried hard enough, we could be one big happy family, he said, staring into his coffee. I didn't realize the cost of that dream. However, he still insisted that I should invite Diane to the wedding. He argued that it would cause a huge rift in the family and that I should be the bigger person. I stood my ground and explained that this wasn't about being petty, but about surrounding myself with people who genuinely care about me on my special day. Our conversation took an unexpected turn when my dad revealed something I never knew. Apparently, shortly after he married Diane, she had given him an ultimatum: either prioritize their new family, meaning her and her kids, or she would leave. He admitted he was scared of being alone and chose to comply with her demands, often at my expense. I was so afraid of failing at marriage again, he said, his voice cracking. I thought if I could make it work with Diane, it would somehow make up for losing your mom. I know now that was wrong. While this explanation helped me understand my dad's behavior, it didn't excuse it. I told him I needed time to process this information and that my decision about the wedding invitation stood. As we were leaving the cafe, he hugged me tightly, something he hadn't done in years. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, he whispered. I should have done that for you all along. After our meeting, I reached out to my step-siblings, Andy and Sharon. To my surprise, Andy was more understanding than I expected. We met at a park where we used to play basketball together years ago. As we sat on the swings, gently rocking back and forth, he confessed that he had always felt uncomfortable with how Diane treated me, but didn't know how to address it without seeming ungrateful. Mom always made it clear that we were lucky to have a new dad, Andy explained. I felt like I couldn't complain about anything without risking that. He apologized for not being a better brother and for his initial angry reaction to the wedding situation. I get it now, he said. You need to do what's right for you. Sharon, on the other hand, refused to talk to me, saying I was tearing the family apart. She sent a long text message accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. Mom gave up so much for us to have a family, she wrote. Why can't you just appreciate that? Her words stung, but I realized her perspective was shaped by years of Diane's influence. Martin has been incredibly supportive through all of this. He suggested we take a weekend trip to clear our heads and focus on our relationship amidst all this family drama. We went to a small coastal town where we had our first vacation together 3 years ago. We spent 2 days walking on the beach, trying local restaurants, and talking about our future. One evening, as we sat on the sand watching the sunset, Martin turned to me and said, "You know, when I first met your family, I couldn't understand why you were so anxious around them. Now I get it. I'm sorry you had to deal with that for so long. His understanding and support meant more to me than I could express. When we returned home, I found several voicemails from Diane. In them, she alternated between angry tirades about my selfishness and tearful pleas to reconsider. "How could you do this to me after everything I've done for you?" she demanded in one message. In another, she sobbed, "Please, Sarah, don't tear this family apart. We can work this out." I haven't responded to Diane yet. Each time I think about calling her back, I remember all the times she made me feel small and unwanted. The Christmas ornaments, the forgotten birthdays, the constant comparisons to Andy and Sharon, it all comes flooding back. For now, the guest list remains unchanged. Martin and I are moving forward with our planning, focusing on the positive aspects of our upcoming celebration. We've chosen a small venue by a lake, reminiscent of where my parents got married. It feels like a way to honor my mom's memory while also starting our new life together. I'm working on accepting that my wedding day might not include my entire family, but it will be filled with people who truly support and love us. My best friend Lisa has stepped up to help with all the tasks my stepmom might have typically handled. She's been amazing, helping me pick out flowers and tasting cakes with me. As the wedding gets closer, I find myself thinking more about my mom. I wish she could be here to see me get married. I've decided to incorporate a few subtle tributes to her in the ceremony. I'll be wearing her favorite flower in my bouquet, and we'll be playing her favorite song during the reception. This whole situation has made me realize how much unresolved grief I still carry, both for my mom and for the relationship I wish I had with my dad and stepmom. I'm considering starting therapy to work through some of these feelings. Martin thinks it's a good idea and has offered to go with me if I want support. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days I feel strong and certain in my decision. Other days, the guilt and doubt creep in. But I'm trying to stay focused on the future, on building a life and potentially a family with Martin where everyone feels valued and loved. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and things have taken another unexpected turn. About 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from Diane. Unlike her previous attempts to contact me, this letter was different. It was handwritten on pale blue stationery, the same kind my mom used to use for her letters. I don't know if Diane knew that or if it was just a coincidence, but it caught me off guard. The letter was long, filled with apologies and reflections on her behavior over the years. Diane wrote that she had started seeing a counselor to work through her issues. She admitted to feeling insecure about her place in my dad's life and how she had wrongly tried to establish dominance by pushing me away. "I was so afraid of being second best to your mother's memory," she wrote, "that I never gave myself a chance to be a real mother to you." She acknowledged specific incidents where she had been unfair or cruel, including the Christmas ornament incident. "I convinced myself I was helping you move on," she explained, "but now I see I was only trying to erase the parts of your life that made me feel insecure." While I appreciated her apology, I was cautious about accepting it at face value. Years of hurt don't disappear with one letter, no matter how heartfelt. After discussing it with Martin, I decided to meet with Diane in person to gauge her sincerity. We met at a quiet cafe in town, neutral ground for both of us. As I waited for her to arrive, I couldn't help but remember all the tense family dinners and awkward holiday gatherings we'd endured over the years. When Diane walked in, I was struck by how small she looked. Dawn was a confident, sometimes intimidating woman I'd known. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap as she sat down. During our meeting, Diane broke down in tears several times, repeating her apologies and asking for a chance to make things right. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, wiping her eyes. "But I want to try to be better, to be the stepmother you deserved all along." She pulled out a small box from her purse and slid it across the table to me. Inside was a delicate silver locket. "This was my grandmother's," Diane explained. "I want you to have it. Maybe you could wear it at your wedding? As you're something old?" The gesture touched me, but I was still conflicted. On one hand, this was the first time Diane had ever acknowledged her behavior and seemed genuinely remorseful. On the other hand, years of hurt don't disappear with one apology and a piece of jewelry. I told Diane that while I appreciated her apology and the gift, I needed time to process everything. I suggested we start with occasional family dinners and see how things progress. She agreed, seeming relieved that I was willing to give her any chance at all. After discussing it with Martin, I made a compromise regarding the wedding. I invited Diane to the ceremony but not the reception. This way, she could be part of the family event without being present for the more intimate celebration afterward. When I called my dad to tell him, he was quiet for a moment before saying, "Thank you, sweetheart. This means a lot." The next family dinner was awkward but not as tense as I had feared. Diane made an effort to engage me in conversation, asking about my job and my wedding plans without trying to take over. My dad seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, and even Andy and Sharon were civil, if a bit reserved. As the wedding approaches, I find myself reflecting on how much has changed. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined Diane being at my wedding in any capacity. Now, while things aren't perfect, there's a sense of hope that wasn't there before. Martin and I are in the final stages of wedding planning. Despite the family drama, we're excited about our big day. We've decided to incorporate a unity candle ceremony, symbolizing the joining of our families. It feels especially poignant given recent events. Last week, I went dress shopping with Lisa, my maid of honor. As I tried on gowns, I found myself wishing my mom was there. In a quiet moment, Lisa hugged me and said, "She'd be so proud of you, you know." It meant the world to hear that. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of my relationship with Diane and my family. While I'm not expecting miracles, I'm hopeful that this could be the beginning of a new, healthier chapter for all of us. There's still a lot of work to be done, but for the first time in years, it feels like we're all trying. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and our wedding day has come and gone. I wanted to share how everything turned out. In the months leading up to the wedding, Diane and I continued to work on our relationship. We had regular family dinners, which started out awkward but gradually became more comfortable. There were still tense moments and old habits that died hard, but I could see she was making an effort. About a month before the wedding, Diane asked if I'd like to go shopping with her to find her outfit for the ceremony. I was hesitant at first, remembering all the times she'd criticized my style in the past. But I agreed, and to my surprise, it turned out to be a pleasant experience. She was respectful of my opinions and even asked for my advice on what to wear. On the wedding day itself, Diane surprised me. Just before the ceremony, she came to my dressing room, looking nervous. She handed me a small, wrapped package. Inside was a framed photo of my mom and me from when I was little, one I thought had been lost years ago. "I found this when we were cleaning out the attic," Diane explained, her voice shaky. "I thought you might want to have it with you today." The gesture brought tears to my eyes. It was a small thing, but it showed that Diane was finally trying to understand what was important to me. I placed the photo on a small table near where I would be standing during the ceremony, a way of having my mom there with me. The ceremony went smoothly. I felt a mix of emotions as I walked down the aisle, seeing Diane sitting next to my dad. But when I reached the altar and saw Martin's smile, everything else faded away. We said our vows, lit the unity candle, and just like that, we were married. When it came time for Diane to leave before the reception, she hugged me gently and whispered, "Thank you for giving me a chance. You look beautiful, and your mom would be so proud." It wasn't a magical fix for years of hurt, but it felt like a step in the right direction. The reception was everything Martin and I had hoped for. Without the underlying tension of family drama, we were able to fully enjoy our celebration. My dad seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, even getting up to dance with me. Andy and Sharon were in good spirits too, with Andy giving a surprisingly heartfelt toast. In the weeks since the wedding, Diane has continued to make efforts to improve our relationship. She's been respectful of my boundaries and hasn't pushed for more than I'm comfortable with. We've had a few more family dinners, and while there's still some awkwardness, it's noticeably less than before. Last Sunday, Diane invited me over to help her go through some old boxes in the attic. As we sorted through years of accumulated stuff, she handed me a familiar-looking ornament, one of the ones I thought had been donated years ago. "I'm sorry I lied," she said quietly. "I kept them. I don't know what I thought. But they're yours, and you should have them." Looking back, I'm glad I stood my ground about the wedding, but also that I was open to Diane's attempts to make amends. It's been a long and sometimes painful journey, but I feel like we're finally moving in a positive direction. Martin and I are now settling into married life and looking forward to our future together. This experience has taught us both a lot about family, forgiveness, and the importance of setting boundaries. While our family may never be perfect, I'm hopeful that we can continue to build stronger, healthier relationships with each other. Yesterday, my dad called to invite us over for Sunday brunch. As I hung up the phone, I realized I wasn't feeling the usual dread that used to accompany family gatherings. Instead, there was a small spark of warmth. It's a start, and for now, that's enough.